Freedom rarely disappears in one dramatic moment. Most of the time, it slips away quietly.
Freedom doesn't usually disappear in a dramatic moment. It rarely announces itself with marching boots or flashing warning lights. Most of the time, it fades quietly. It slips away in the spaces where responsibility fades, and power quietly fills the vacuum. The American founders understood that reality long before we ever debated it on cable news. They studied history closely enough to know that concentrated power always grows if no one restrains it. And they knew something else too. Human nature doesn't suddenly improve the moment someone holds office. So they didn't design a system based on trust in rulers. They designed one based on limits, limits on power, limits on authority, limits that assumed people are capable of good, but also capable of abusing control if no one draws clear lines. Instead of concentrating authority in one distant center, they built a framework that spread responsibility outward. Government would have a role, but it would never be the center of daily life. Citizens would be, communities would be, and that idea shaped the structure of the entire country. Now let's shift to how that design actually worked. The federal government was given a relatively short list of responsibilities: defend the nation, conduct foreign affairs, maintain peace between the states. Beyond that, most authority stayed much closer to home: daily life, schools, families, churches, local decisions belong to the people living inside those communities. The idea was simple. The closer power stays to the people it affects, the easier it is to hold that power accountable. Neighbors know each other. Local leaders can't hide behind layers of distance. Responsibility stays personal, and when responsibility stays personal, liberty tends to stay strong. For a long time, that balance held. But over the decades, something slowly began to change. And this is where the story takes an interesting turn. Washington didn't suddenly decide to run everything. Instead, power accumulated gradually, one crisis at a time, one emergency at a time, one temporary solution after another. Programs were created to solve urgent problems, and many of those programs help people in difficult moments. But temporary programs have a strange habit. They rarely stay temporary. As they expanded, new departments were created to manage them. Those departments developed rulemaking power, then enforcement power, and sometimes even adjudication power. In other words, the same institutions began writing rules, enforcing them, and interpreting them. Most of the people doing that work are not elected. They remain in place while administrations come and go. And over time, that system formed something many people now call the administrative state, not through one dramatic takeover, but through thousands of quiet expansions, the kind that rarely make headlines. Now here's the part that often gets overlooked. While Washington was gradually expanding, something else in American life was quietly shrinking: local community strength. Families became more scattered. Neighborhood connections weakened. Churches, which once played a powerful stabilizing role in communities, lost cultural influence in many places. Civic organizations faded. And when those institutions weaken, people naturally begin looking somewhere else for solutions. They look upward, toward government. Not because people suddenly became lazy, but because the support structures that once carried responsibility locally weren't as strong as they used to be. And when that happens, central authority grows almost automatically, because nature hates a vacuum. History has a way of reminding us of that pattern. The founders warned that liberty doesn't survive on structure alone. It also requires strong citizens. James Madison famously observed that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. But because human nature isn't perfect, government must exist, and just as importantly, it must be restrained. The same principle appears in Scripture as well. 2 Corinthians reminds us, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." That verse isn't about political systems, but it points to something deeper. Freedom isn't only maintained by institutions, it's sustained by character, by responsibility, by people willing to carry burdens rather than constantly handing them to someone else. Which brings the story into the present moment. Debates about government power will always exist. Policies change, agencies rise and fall, reforms come and go. Those debates matter. But the deeper question underneath them is simpler. Are citizens willing to carry responsibility themselves? Because a limited government only functions when the people are strong enough to hold up the rest of the structure. If citizens step back from that role, the system naturally shifts. Authority moves upward, responsibility moves outward, and the balance changes. So the real conversation isn't only about trimming agencies or rewriting policies. It's about something more personal: the strength of families, the vitality of churches, the health of local communities, the willingness of citizens to step forward rather than waiting for distant institutions to solve every problem. And that brings us to the heart of the story. Freedom grows strongest when government remains limited and when citizens remain engaged. Not perfect, but engaged. Not centralized, but connected. Not controlled, but responsible. Because that kind of strength doesn't come from bureaucracies. It comes from people. And when people carry that responsibility well, liberty has a way of standing much taller.
Is government growing because we're shrinking? Join the conversation with your answer by commenting below.
Please support the channel by clicking the logo on the left to go to our channel to subscribe, or the screen on the right for your next video. Thanks again.
Your next video is now ready.